Good morning, everyone. Lovely to have you with us at Hope Street again this morning. Today's story from the Bible is a very exciting occasion, and we're going to show you some pictures now and see if you can work out where the story might take place. So I'm sure you worked it out. Wedding rings, wedding flowers, wedding car, wedding cake. Didn't that look yummy? All kinds of things. But there was a very strange thing as well. What was that big stone jar? We don't have those at weddings now, do we? Well, none of the weddings I've been to anyway. In Bible times, people used to serve wine at their wedding celebrations, and wine was a very important part of the celebration. It showed the guests that came to the wedding that the host really appreciated them being there and respected them. What do you think might happen if they ran out of wine and there wasn't enough wine to drink? I mean, how would you feel if you went to a party and all there was to drink was water? I don't think you'd be very excited by that, would you? Well, let's have a look at what happens in our Bible story today. It's taken from the book of John, chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. And I'm going to be reading it from this children's picture Bible this morning. The wedding at Cana. Jesus and his disciples went to a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother Mary was also one of the guests. There were many people at the wedding feast, and the host gave them the best food and wine they could afford. The servants waited on the guests, offering them more and more of the sumptuous food and wine whenever they needed it. But behind the scenes, there was a terrible panic. One of the servants had realised the hosts had run out of wine. They did not know what to do. In those days, people couldn't just go to the shops and buy some more. It would bring disgrace and embarrassment on the family if they could not entertain their guests properly. Jesus' mother overheard the murmurings in the background. She was a great friend of the family and wanted to help in some way. Mary whispered to Jesus, "They've run out of wine." Jesus realised that his mother was wanting him to use his power to save the day. But he also knew that he must do God's will. So he said to her, "I can only act when God tells me." Mary listened to her son, but she still said to the household servants, "Do whatever my son tells you to do." She was sure that God would allow Jesus to help her friends. Jesus looked around. Nearby, there were 6 enormous stone water jars. These had each contained 20 or 30 gallons of water at the beginning of the feast. Now they were empty, as the guests had used the water for washing their hands before eating the meal. In those days, because of religious rules, the Jews washed their hands many times as part of a ceremony, so large amounts of water were necessary for a party like this. Jesus beckoned one of the servants. "Fill these jars with water again," he said. So the servant did as he instructed. He filled them right up to the brim. "Now pour some out and take it to the guests," said Jesus. So the servants took jugs of water and served them to the merrymakers. The first person to taste the wine said, "My goodness, what fine wine!" Most people serve the best fine wine first and the cheapest last, but you have saved the best till the end. The guests had no idea where this wine had come from, but the servants and the disciples knew, and they marvelled at what had happened. This was the first miracle that Jesus performed. Because of it, the disciples realised that their leader was very special, and they put their faith in him. Wow, what an incredible story. Wasn't that amazing? How special. I've got a few questions to ask you about this story. I wonder, how do you think those servants felt when Jesus asked them to fill those enormous jars with water? I think they might have thought that he was a bit crazy. Why would they need more water? They needed wine. But did they do what he asked? They did, didn't they? They did what Jesus asked them to do. And Jesus did a miracle. Filling those jars with water would have been a lot of work. They were big jars, and it was probably a hot day, and filling them up with water again. They didn't just have a tap that they could turn on. They had to take buckets and go and fill them up and go back and get more water, and it would have taken a long time and been hard work. And they filled them right to the top. They really trusted Jesus and did what he said. That's quite a challenge, isn't it? I wonder if when Jesus asks us to do something that doesn't really make sense to us, that we don't really understand, whether sometimes we are tempted not to do what he asked because it doesn't make sense. But as we can see from this story, if we do trust Jesus and do what he asks, then amazing things can happen. I also want to ask you about miracles. Do you know what a miracle is? Well, a miracle is something that we can't explain, something that happens that we can't explain by normal things. It only happens because God does it. That's a miracle. And water changing into wine, well, I don't think that's normal, is it? I don't think that can happen. Imagine if I had a jug of water here. Do you think if I sang to it, maybe if I talked to it very nicely and asked it with pleases and begged it, please turn into wine, please water, turn into wine, you know you want to. Do you think it would? No, of course not. It can only happen because God made it happen, because he is all powerful. So you might be thinking, well, that's a nice miracle, that's a nice story in the Bible, but why did Jesus do miracles? Well, I think Jesus did miracles to show us that he was God. And I think in this story, not only did he show us that he was God so that the disciples and Mary and the servants knew that, but also because he was concerned for the host of the wedding, that he wanted to show care and love for him as well by helping him and giving more wine to the party. So Jesus did miracles to show us that he was God, that he was really special, and that we could put our trust in him. Isn't that amazing? Let's think about some ways that we could show Jesus that we trust him this week.
Hello, there are some activities for the story this week, and so there's activities like this, where you can colour this in, and then you can put a safety pin there, and you can colour half of it blue and half of it red, because then you can turn it, and Jesus turned water to wine. There's also this, which you can colour in. It's what they might have drunk out of back then, and you can stick things on it and just colour it and enjoy doing that. And there are also some activities like a crossword and a word search which you can do. And also on the website there's a recipe for how to make Play-Doh, so you can make that. And then there's activities, so you can make a Play-Doh pot, and you can etch on them what Jesus means to you. So maybe a heart, because he loves you, or if you're maybe scared of the dark, you could do a light bulb, your light. And there's also some pictures of the pots, and you can put them in, try to order them from smallest to biggest. Thank you.